Okay. Again, I want to welcome everyone to our session today. We're excited to have everyone here. This program is called Export Opportunities in the Clean Tech, Green Tech. Green energy's future is now for Indiana, and we do believe that to be the case. Again, we're asking everyone to mute your mic if you're not speaking. We're excited about the opportunity for everyone to be here with us today. What we want to do is give you a little brief introduction of who we are. Again, I said I'm with the U.S. Department of Commerce. We are the frontline trade promotion organization of the United States government. The Commerce Department is really dedicated to helping U.S. companies and Indiana companies specifically compete and win in the global economy. So we're excited about that. What I'd like to do is turn this over to Andrew now, and he will discuss our Indiana District Export Council and who they are and how they are a part of our program today.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome everyone. My name's Andrew Ranke, and I'm the chair for the Indiana District Export Council, the Indiana DEC as we're commonly referred to. We're a not-for-profit organization created under the auspices of the U.S. Department of Commerce. Every state in the union has at least one. We work in partnership and in tandem with the U.S. Department of Commerce, with Mark. In fact, Mark serves as the secretary for our Indiana DEC, and as that's the same with the other DECs across the country. DEC members are volunteer international trade professionals representing the manufacturing, service, academic, and government sectors, all vetted and appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce to assist and train small businesses in promoting U.S. exports. This is our 6th and final Export Lunch and Learn webinar of the year. It's a new series that the IDEC launched in reaction to COVID, but I think we're going to continue that well into 2022 and going forward because of the popularity and the number of registries we experience. Today, we're focusing on green tech, clean tech, coinciding with, of course, the COP26, the climate conference going on in Glasgow. It's a topic in demand, of interest, and will remain so going forward. So it's good that we're getting together, having this conversation to learn more about the foreign opportunities and export potential for Indiana's economy and Indiana's exporters. Joining us today from the other DEC members, Tom Miller, our treasurer, Christine Everett from IU Cyber, Nate Lamar, Raju Shintala from IEDC and the Indiana India Business Council. And thank you as always to our collaborative partners, the Indy Chamber, the Indiana Small Business Development Center, IU Cyber, Exim Bank, and the SBA local Indiana office. And thank you also to the presenters today, and a big thanks to Eric Hunt for providing the big lift and getting the speakers to the table today. So again, thank you, welcome, and Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'd like to give you a couple of brief comments. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to give a couple of brief comments about our speakers and give some bio introductions. First up, I'll mention Gary Parker from Cummins. Mr. Parker currently serves as the Engineering Program Director at Cummins Electrified Power Division. Mr. Parker serves in the Cummins New Power Unit, and it is a global leader in battery fuel cell, hydrogen, and electrified power technologies. He has over 24 years of experience at Cummins, beginning his career as a systems and integrations engineer, technical program manager for hybrid engines and electromobility, and now serves as an engineering program director at Cummins New Power, its newest operating unit. The next person I want to introduce is Go Electric, Norm Campbell. Mr. Campbell is a federal team manager at Go Electric, serving federal government, military, and Midwest commercial clients with battery-enabled microgrid solutions and next generation of energy services. He has over 25 years of experience in the utility industry, automated metering systems management, as well as business development and project delivery for federal energy and energy efficient projects. Next, Battery Innovation Center and Energy Systems Network, Ben Reitzman. Mr. Reitzman is the president and CEO of the Battery Innovation Center, BIC, in Newberry, Indiana, and serves as the executive VP of Energy Systems Network, ESN, based in Indianapolis. The BIC is a collaborative initiative designed to incorporate partnerships from global companies, renowned universities, and government agencies to accelerate innovation and commercialization in the field of battery technology. ESN is an industry network focused on the development of Indiana's energy, technology, clean tech sector. Finally, we have the U.S. Department of Commerce Clean Tech Office, my colleague Devin Horn. Devin Horn is a senior international trade specialist within the International Trade Administration's Office of Energy and Environmental Industries, where he leads the agency's efforts related to the U.S. clean tech export competitiveness strategy. Devin also serves as the ITA's lead for the energy storage and hydrogen technologies and represents the Department Federal Consortium for Advanced Batteries.
Oh, I turned the wrong freaking screen.
Where he contributes to the development of the national blueprint for lithium batteries.
I
So
don't see anybody talking.
thank you to our partners.
Or actually, there is somebody talking, and I can't hear a single thing. So that's a
Yeah,
no.
please mute yourself. Can you hear me, everyone? Okay, please mute if you're not on speaking. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to turn the platform now to my colleague Devin Horn to give us the macro overview from the commerce perspective. He's first up to bat. So Devin, please take it away.
Great, Mark. Thanks so much for the introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. This will take me just a moment. But I'm really excited to be here talking to this group. As Mark mentioned, I lead the day-to-day work at this as it relates to the development of our U.S. clean tech export competitiveness strategy, which is a mouthful. But I'm happy to give everyone here an update on where the strategy is at in its development, and hopefully get some feedback from you too as we are putting this together and fleshing it out further. So really happy to be here. As Mark mentioned, I'm in the Energy and Environmental Industries Office at the International Trade Administration and have been with the department since 2016. So moving in here, Mark, you can see my screen, right? Great. Great. So I want to talk about what kind of kicked this all off. As I think a lot of people are aware, the president issued an executive order back in January on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. And this EO, at the release of that EO, he emphasized the importance of linking efforts to tackle climate change to creating new jobs in the economy. It also directed agencies like the Department of Commerce to develop strategies and plans that integrate climate considerations into our international engagements. And obviously for us at ITA, that's a lot of our trade promotion and export promotion work. So we've been working really closely with the Special Presidential Envoy for Climate and other U.S. government agencies like the Department of Energy, State Department, and others, including our export finance agencies. And at the direction of Secretary Raimondo, we've started developing this clean tech export competitiveness strategy, which is an example of a key trade promotion policy effort that we're undertaking to align our resources towards the goals of the executive order. At a high level here, we're approaching this with three major goals in mind. One, we want you all to have greater market access in key regions and industries. We also want to make sure that you have access to enhanced information and more targeted trade promotion efforts related specifically to clean tech exporters. So we really want to tailor what we're doing to the needs of the industry. Secondary to that, we want to bring greenfield foreign direct investment into the United States in these market segments so that we're building out more manufacturing capacity and leveraging the expertise from abroad as well to grow alongside US-based companies. A big question here when we throw around the word clean tech is, what do we mean? Clean tech is obviously a broad term, and we are being intentionally broad at this stage. We do want to maintain a focus on climate solutions within the strategy, so technologies, services that can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But we want to make sure we're not missing anything. So while we're developing our strategy, we want to make sure that we're taking a very broad approach, being service providers, and really putting forward the best that the U.S. exporters have to offer. As we've kicked this off, we've done a lot of stakeholder outreach so far, and this is certainly part of that outreach effort. We've talked to about 120 companies so far, including our industry advisory committees. The office that I'm in, we oversee 3 industry advisory committees to the Secretary of Commerce. We have a renewable energy and energy efficiency advisory committee, a civil nuclear trade advisory committee, and an environmental technologies trade advisory committee. And just for your awareness, if being a member of any of those piques your interest, we will be rechartering and looking for new members in 2022. So please keep an ear out for that. We also published a request for comments in the Federal Register. That comment period closed October 15th, and we received about 50 written comments that range anywhere from one paragraph to about 40 detailed pages of recommendations for the government and the Commerce Department to take into consideration. While that comment period has closed, we certainly welcome continuing feedback and thoughts on what we can do better to support U.S. exporters. So I don't want you to think that just because the comment period is closed, we don't want to hear from you. We absolutely do, and I hope we can have a robust conversation here at the end. So as we get going here in the development of this strategy, we've identified a few actions that we can take today to better support your industries. As I think many of you are aware, we lead a lot of trade event programming here and put on a number of trade events. We want to do more of that targeted to clean tech exporters here. We also want to increase our outreach from the Advocacy Center. And if you're not familiar with the Advocacy Center, I want to make you aware of that. This is a free service that the U.S. government offers to all U.S. companies that are bidding on a foreign public procurement. And this is meant to really level the playing field when you're competing against state-owned enterprises. So if you haven't connected with our Advocacy Center, I hope you'll follow up with Mark or me, and I'd be happy to connect you with the Advocacy Center and tell you more about that. In our stakeholder outreach, we've really heard a lot about the need to engage on the development of international standards and make sure that industry has a voice in the development of those standards. So we want to grow the work that we're doing in that space, especially for emerging technologies. You've heard, I'm sure, a lot about hydrogen. I'm sure we'll talk more about that coming up here, but certainly there's a lot of work to be done to establish standards and regulatory frameworks that keep the door open for U.S. exporters. I've already mentioned the importance of attracting foreign direct investment. And then the U.S. government also has a number of bilateral and multilateral commercial dialogues, strategic dialogues, and energy dialogues. And we want to make sure that these are aligned to the needs of U.S. clean tech exporters. So we're doing some good digging here to take a look at everything that the U.S. government is engaged here in and make sure that we have good alignment across those ongoing dialogues. If anything I've mentioned here piques your interest at a high level, we'd love for you to get involved. As a first line, you can always follow up with Mark at your U.S. Export Assistance Center in Indiana, and he'll be happy to support you. And I also want to direct people to our new Climate and Clean Technology Solutions webpage. We've got good information on there, and we'll be updating that regularly. And as I mentioned here, if you want to share feedback about what your priorities are as an exporter, especially in the clean tech space, you can always email us at cleantech@trade.gov, or I'll provide my direct email as well. But we really want to make sure our door is open here because we are seeing really growing opportunity globally. As I'm sure we'll get into a more detailed conversation here shortly, but there's obviously a lot of public funds being committed to the energy transition, to deploying new technologies like hydrogen. At my last check, there were about $70 billion committed to public investments in supporting the development of hydrogen infrastructure. And that's a lot of money for U.S. exporters to pursue overseas. So we want to make sure that you as U.S. companies and exporters are being connected to those opportunities. So that's my presentation. Happy to have a more detailed conversation here, but Mark, I'll turn it over to you. I'm looking forward to the question and answer here at the end.
Excellent. Devin, thank you so much for the brief overview. We appreciate that. And I want to tell our audience today that we will have a discussion after our four speakers are finished with their presentations today. We'll have a discussion and talk about and allow you to both give your commentary and also ask questions of our speakers. I'd like to turn the podium, as it were, virtually over to Ben, my colleague and friend from the Battery Innovation Center. Ben, take it away.
Well, good afternoon. And I apologize to everyone. My voice is just about gone. So if it goes during this conversation, you'll know why. So give me just a moment and give me my... Hopefully everybody can see the slides at this point.
We can, yes.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate Mark, you inviting us in, and Devin, appreciate your conversation as well, and kind of starting in about how the U.S. and where we're headed from a support perspective, both locally and globally, and that's really falls directly into the Battery Innovation Center and our mission, and frankly how the BIC came about. So BIC started out as a, excuse me, an entity that did serve our Department of Defense early on and Department of Energy. Since that time, since really its 2012 inception, we've grown to serve now north of 450 companies all over the globe at this point. Obviously, Indiana is where we are in southern Indiana, but our reach and our connection, both import and export, comes out of a global stage. So BIC, I won't bore you with reading every one of these bullet points. Hopefully everybody can catch that. It will also save my voice a little bit. The Battery Innovation Center was effectively put in place to help with the next generation of energy storage. And I think the easiest summation for everyone to hopefully understand why we came about is after the 08, 09 crash, and frankly through some early, I would say some early investments in the battery space here in the US, we had the unfortunate loss of several of those companies through the downturn in that 08, 09, along with unfortunately at that time several international firms had acquired some of the technology assets and capabilities that were here in the US. And so we really lost some of our core roots from an intellectual property perspective and also a next generation requirement for innovation. And so that was where BIC came about. We are a not-for-profit, and again today serving hundreds of clients across the globe. You're going to hear from one of the clients has been a long-standing partner and one of the founding partners of BIC today as well, which is Cummins. But we worked with Cummins and many other firms, both large OEMs all the way to folks with startups, and helping them with their next generation of energy technology. And with that, we do everything from really after raw materials development. So this is the stage where most people hear about batteries today, as they hear about these game-changing breakthrough technologies. But as you look into those, you hear about, well, hopefully we'll see those in products in the next, X amount of years. Typically, those are 5 to 10 year forecasts. That is where BIC serves today. Is actually our goal is to help those technologies commercialize faster. So we're working on reducing those long innovation cycles. We jointly develop, the product with the customers, but they own all the intellectual property, which is very unique in this space. And then, again, we have some of that background. IP heritage or ITAR heritage from a DoD perspective. With that, we're doing everything from, again, the materials up through final cell. This is not high production environment, but we're looking at producing enough of the product to validate the recipe. And the best analogy I use for folks is kind of think of us as Betty Crocker. Someone had to think about all the ingredients, all the processes, all the tolerances and the capabilities that go into, the chocolate chip cookie recipe that you may be able to follow today. We have to do the same thing. So we're helping create that very first recipe set and help validate that recipe set so that it can be replicated in a market. Also doing testing and evaluation as we look in certification, as we look at these products coming into market that are both new and innovative, and also their new applications. We're helping validate everything from the cell all the way to large system capability. Within that, there's some R&D capability that we have to keep up with as well. So we recognize that we do have to overcome some of the common hurdles for the industry as well. Again, folks can kind of read through the slides, and I'd welcome them to go out to our website and check out more. Number two, you're welcome to contact one of my team to learn deeply more about what BIC does. We do everything from starting from that low volume cell manufacturing all the way through to low volume pack production. And as I said, we've got some material and process R&D. We recognize there's a lot of roadblocks along the way for some of these technologies that we've helped push them along and get them to market quicker. From a battery testing and validation, again, working with all the major standards agencies. In fact, rather than someone who tests routinely to standards, our job is to actually help modify those standards, help create the new standards, help ensure the next competitive technologies come into those standards as well. With that, do a lot of cool stuff. You can see here, some fire stuff. We do a lot of fires and what we call rapid disassembly. Some would know as an explosion. And the goal here is to ensure the safety and the capability and the overall performance of those products as they are coming to market and they're being designed and built for the first time. We also do a lot of focus as we think about on the global stage. Our grid is also hugely impacted. So not only portable products and vehicles, which make most of the sexy headlines today, there's a ton of work, frankly, that's going on in our infrastructure that's a requirement as well. And it's funny, this not only supports these products, but as we think about, export and on a global stage, how are we helping other countries with how they're getting their power? How are we helping them with their technologies to ensure not just base level operation, but also influence into the community? So batteries and energy storage and clean tech are having a key play into how do we have not only obviously there's some levels of climate influence, but even more impactful is the human factor influence as well. So a lot of the stuff that we're working on the microgrid and grid side and with vehicle to grid is how are we having an influence, to the daily lives of, folks on the planet. Within that, we also do a lot of applied services and technical advisory. Most of this is new, while, lithium ion is probably our heaviest focus. But even, shy of lead acid technology, a lot of these battery technologies are really, have come about in the last 10, 15 years max. And so they're still very much an emerging, evolving technology. So there's a lot of work in helping educate the community, helping educate our users, helping educate everyone within that entire value stream. Along with, as we think about what products are going to meet the best overall demand, we spend a lot of time with competitive analysis. We don't produce our own product. We produce products for other people. So we're helping folks avoid what we hear in our industry is, people come into the battery industry and the energy storage industry wanting to be agnostic. And I think that's really, if I leave you with any punchline for BIC, is Battery Innovation Center was put on the ground to keep people from being agnostic, because agnostic unfortunately means that you're going to wind up with probably not the best solution, not the most cost-effective solution. In fact, you may wind up with a negative solution or a negative result. So we help you be what we call battery intentional instead of battery agnostic. So again, a very unique kind of charge. Kind of the last ones here is just, as we think about that, training and outreach, this applies to not only folks within the industry, but folks that are coming into the industry along with our next generation of workforce. So how do we keep up with our, I'll say our aging or our existing workforce, and also all the way through to what's going to be our newest, folks entering this industry. And so we have some really great partners. We have some great both online and virtual and in-person courses that if you're new to batteries, we can help you get up to speed. And if you're in batteries, we can help you get ahead of the folks in the industry. And if you've been doing batteries for a long time, we can help you, really continue to fast track and advance your capability. So very last one was just, as I said, we, as a not-for-profit, we do work with a ton of different companies. Unfortunately, a lot of those, because of the nature of the business we do, we don't even get a chance to share their logos, but there are a few companies here that I think folks would recognize. Obviously, we're going to hear from Gary Parker and Cummins shortly, who's been a long-standing partner of BIC, have helped them with a lot of their evolution, which has been, really awesome to see, and frankly has been a privilege for us to be a part of. But there's a ton of other companies as well. And this is, again, you hopefully look in this listing here and see that it goes above and beyond, automobiles or, typical products that you may see. There's a ton of other applications that batteries and energy storage are having a tremendous impact to the world as we see it. So with that, I'll end my presentation.
Thank you, Ben. We really appreciate that. That's great intel, and it's great to know right here in Indiana, something like this so exciting is happening, and we are glad that you're a part of it. We want to turn our attention now. What we're going to do is move in a funnel fashion. We started at the macro level of the national scene, and hopefully my colleague Devin Horn and you felt he set the scene for what the government is doing at a writ large level. Then we came down to Indiana. Here's an initiative here that's happening that has national and international implications in battery technology. Now we move on to a company that we know well, Cummins, and we're going to turn it over to Gary to talk about Cummins initiatives in this space. And so we appreciate your work there, Gary, and we take it over now. And we need to make sure you're unmuted. Okay. Let me see if we can unmute you. I'll request that now.
Can you guys hear me okay now?
We can.
Check 1, 2, test. All right, great.
Excellent.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Appreciate certainly the intro there, and thanks Ben. We've been a partner for them quite a bit. I think we're probably quickly approaching a threshold of having 400 Cummins employees going through that battery program. It's been great. But just one thing about Cummins. Most people think about Cummins as a diesel engine manufacturer, and certainly, hopefully today, there'll be a different understanding about Cummins and kind of where we're heading, certainly. And from the perspective of export, the big deal there is we are operating in over 190 countries today worldwide, and so the position that we are in to be able to do things like this, I think, are very good. And certainly, as we roll out these new technologies, that certainly will be a very helpful thing, with respect to the topic of export. Cummins has been around over 102 years, and one of the things I like to say about it is we're really quickly approaching being able to spend $1 billion in technology development every single year on this stuff, and so we are certainly doing quite a bit to make progress here. But really, the key centerpiece in all of this is our direction and where we're heading. And I am very proud of our company to kind of say we're pointed towards Planet 2050, which is an area where if I was to kind of focus on, there's lots of things that Cummins is focusing on, but really, I think the key relevant piece for this session is this area in blue. As we look at our 2050 targets, is we're really heading towards carbon neutrality with our products and our plants. And so that's an ambitious goal, and so the work actually starts now. And I'm in a new power business unit, which is for all practical purposes approaching being about 5 years old. And so we are making progress, and certainly making progress pretty quickly. We have, believe it or not, work happening already in a dozen different cities around the world as we're continuing to make progress here. But like I said, most know Cummins really on the far left of this image, and we are certainly a technology leader with a broad portfolio of power solutions. But even in some of those areas, we're doing quite a bit of work in biodiesel and renewable natural gas. And today, all of our engine products today can accept all the way up to B20 in biodiesel capabilities, and so that's terrific. And we're pushing the envelope of that even further. But we're going to focus really more on the areas around battery electric and fuel cell technologies, and so this is really the focus. But to get a feel of kind of where we're tracking today is covering basically a full portfolio to really help us through this transition as we march towards 2050. And this is not just a pretty slide, but the content here is work happening in many different markets that are related to what we do today. And so we'll get a little bit deeper into this. But if we look at the New Power business and really kind of where we're focusing on core technology, certainly there is the battery electric components and powertrains. And so the things that we're doing there to really lay a good foundation for this, because believe it or not, everything that you do in fuel cell is actually complementary to these particular activities. And so we're working on a very large format for commercial batteries, and we're going to see this battery portfolio grow over time. And I think this is tremendously exciting. So there's an example there of one of our products called the BP74E that is a product that's going into transit bus today, and we could take this battery pack and we can scale it up quite a bit to pushing the limits of having as much as 500 kilowatt hours of energy. And so with the battery electric components, we're really talking about on highway markets, off highway markets, but then ensuring that it properly scales. One of the questions is, well, if you're doing battery electric, why are you doing fuel cell stuff? Does that make sense? And so for markets that we are in today, we recognize that while full battery electric powertrains are going to be good for certain markets, markets that have some of that high energy demand, we see that the fuel cell options are going to be a lot better for the end customers. So the speed by which, first of all, a fuel cell powertrain is very efficient. In this case, the battery shrinks down, but your source of fuel or source of energy is actually hydrogen in this case. Hydrogen, you can refuel it really fast. That's a really big deal for our customers. And it has, like I said, very excellent energy density capabilities. So for applications like long haul trucks, this really allows our customers to kind of keep that top line revenue, where it needs to be. Efficiency is great, but it's not so great if weight gets too big, and that's certainly a big concern if you keep packing more and more batteries. We got to get that balance right. So the complementary of these two technologies is really great because it allows us to blend those together to deliver the right technology to the customer at the right time. Now, a part of that, we know the infrastructure is a tremendous barrier to this, and we've gotten ourselves involved in hydrogen production through electrolysis or using electrolyzers for this work, and so we're building and helping build capabilities there to be able to produce hydrogen. Right now, all green hydrogen. So hydrogen has many different colors. Cummins is focusing on green, which means that the sources by which we produce it is in itself renewable. And so while that's only a small sliver of our total world energy production today, we know that there's going to need to be some great strides there over time to allow and watch that to grow. So on the fuel cell side, we've got really two technology centerpieces. One is the solid oxide fuel cell, and the other one is the PEM fuel cells. And we've got PEM pointed towards our mobile products, and certainly solid oxide pointed more towards stationary power kinds of applications. And so you can see a listing there of different considerations for this. And so we've done things like using solid oxide fuel cells to help power data centers, which we know continues to grow at high rates as the world is producing more and more knowledge and more data. As we think about the context of these different combinations, we already got a pretty full suite of engine capabilities, all the way up to one of the newest engines that our defense folks said, Gary, you should just mention this. We've got a 1,000 horsepower new engine called ACE that is going into compact vehicles and likely inside and fitting within the framework of hybrid powertrains. And so this really gives the company a vast array of capabilities to really buffet these technologies to really help the customer hone in on what they need. And so, perfect examples today, we see this in the natural gas space, where we have certain areas and certain regions that are very well positioned for that, and then they have that working well within their business models. And so we see very similar things happening as we proceed through this. And certainly, like I said, in the hydrogen production, we're trying to be a part of that infrastructure solution. But I'll conclude here with some thoughts, because really, the pace that we're going to be able to go, Cummins cannot do it alone, and we recognize that, and it's going to take partners at various levels, including the government, coming alongside in this. And so What Cummins can do and what Cummins can control is certainly focus on technical readiness, and this involves the supporting and contributing to the evolution of the technology itself, and how those technologies translate into products that meet customers' needs. And so we are deep into that. And on the far end of this, you got total cost of ownership, and so making sure that it's the right technology delivered at the right time, meeting customer needs. So it's got to fit well in their business models. It's got to work, and so that's terrifically critical in this. And so we feel that because of this technology buffet that we're able to offer, that we can really help customers really make the right choices in their markets. But the middle stuff is huge, and so topics like infrastructure readiness. And so Cummins is doing a great deal of work to, ensure that for like battery electric powertrains that we are compatible with charging stations in the market. So there's a lot of work going into that. And I mentioned the hydrogen production side. So we're trying to do our part to contribute, but knowing that it's going to take really all of us, and certainly our friends in the government to help. And I'll be I got Lawrence and Erica also as a part of this as well, doing great work on our government relations side, and so they're here to help as well. But I'll conclude with this because I think this is a critical piece in terms of partnership.
Thanks, Gary, very much. We appreciate that, and it's good to get that overview of Cummins and what he's doing. That's fantastic. We'd like to now turn the platform now, just in the interest of time, to my friend and colleague, Norm Campbell from Go Electric. And then we will open the floor after Norm's done to some general discussion. Norm?
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
We can, but we
Excellent.
cannot see you.
You
Oh,
see
there we
now.
are.
And I apologize,
Okay.
there may be some background noise because I'm at a conference and it's hard to find a quiet place. However, let's take a look real quick as kind of where we are in this global marketplace. So let me know when you can see my PowerPoint deck.
It's up now, Norm.
Okay, great. So again, I'm Norm Campbell. I work for a company called Go Electric, and we are a battery-enabled microgrid specialty manufacturer located a little bit north of Indianapolis. A picture is worth 1,000 words. I have some deep Indiana roots. Although I wasn't born here, I have spent the majority of my life here, so I am considering myself a Hoosier. I certainly have ties up on the northern side of the state to my alma mater. Go Irish, beat Georgia Tech. Okay, so Go Electric, what are we trying to do? Well, we're actually trying to create an easy button for the microgrid world. One of the things that we specialize in is that we specialize in creating microgrids or building microgrids that are mobile, deployable, and or stationary, but we are trying to drive all the custom engineering out of those systems. I will share a little bit more about that as we go along. And there's some extreme interests in these products from the military side, which we've been working diligently. I'm the federal business manager for us, so they really like what we've developed here in state and the performance that it has, but it has great commercial applications as well. So who are we? We haven't been around that long. We're only 10 years old. The founders of our company came from the automotive world. So they came from GE, Delphi, and Ward Warner. We're located in Anderson, which just a little north of Indianapolis off of I-69. In late 2019, we were purchased by Saft, and we are now part of Total Energies. And I have got a little bit of a tidbit on that on the next slide. Saft is a large French battery manufacturer. They've been around for a long, long time, but they also serve serve our military and other aviation industries and automotive trains and whatnot throughout the world. One of the nice things about being part of a company like that is that we do have some additional R&D resources that are made available to us. But one thing that they were very adamant is that we have been battery agnostic in our systems. Because of how we were originally developed, and that means brand agnostic as well as chemistry agnostic. And we'll get to continue doing that. That way we have multiple applications and multiple use cases that we're able to serve. We're not a huge crew. There's only about 30 of us. Actually, we just hired somebody new, so there's 31. But we do have work all over the globe because of our reach. And here's a little bit more about Total Energies. And we now have a reach into a very large marketplace, which also means that we're now looking at exporting our systems to different locations for electrification, for foreign military applications, rural electrifications, mine applications, and so on and so forth. Okay. And there's a little bit of a move. Total is now making a commitment to becoming one of the largest renewable energy businesses in the world. So that plays well with what we're doing, and it's one of the reasons why they brought us on board. Okay, so I like to do a little bit of a definition before we ever get going on presentations, is that we have a consistent definition of what a microgrid is. And for us, a microgrid is really the ability for you to be self-sufficient. So you have energy resources at your campus or your building, and you can isolate from the grid intentionally or unintentionally. So unintentionally would be if you have a grid outage that was unexpected. And that's how we look at a microgrid. Couple of quick pictures. Macrogrid, that's how we get served in our world. Where we are right now is in the MISO territory, although some of PJM is in our area as well, especially up in the Fort Wayne area where AEP is served. What we do is we focus on two use cases on the right. Campus microgrids, building microgrids for critical load, as well as off-grid electrification projects. And what makes us a little bit different. This is a little image of our system. I'll show you some other images as we move along here, but one of the things that we specialize in is being able to move up and down the vertical line where we can be the grid or we can be part of the grid. And our controllers are designed to be able to make that happen. One of the things that we are a little bit different, very much different, I would think, from a lot of our other microgrid business folks, is that we were built on a automotive principle and a powertrain principle, which means that we were very compact and we also act very quickly. The best explanation that I can give to folks is that if you have renewable assets attached to your facility and you see a power outage from the grid up to and including a 3-phase outage, we will keep your solar system online at all times. So we act within 80 milliseconds from sensing to clearing a grid fault, which allows the inverters on the solar system to continue operating. That speed is built into our systems, so we don't need spinning reserves or anything else that needs to be attached to make that happen. What that does is it gives you the ability to have an asset that can continue to run for you and work for you under adverse conditions. The majority of grids are going to be what they call black start, where those systems come offline, but you can't bring them back online by rules and regulations of the utility. Whereas that is important for us is that in our mobile applications with the U.S. military. Another thing that's a little bit different about our little group in Anderson is that we have 2 1-megawatt test cells. So we can actually test our hardware before we ever ship it out to the field, which is good because that way the commissioning in the field is reduced. Again, we're trying to reduce and eliminate some of the custom engineering that goes into these systems. So let's get into the products. This is our 60 kW mobile unit. The HPS on one side, battery on the other side. This is able to run up to three generators including solar input, shore power, which would be any kind of grid connection. So since we run on NATO, it can be 50, 60 hertz. We really don't care what it is. And our output on this unit is 208 three-phase as well as 480 three-phase. We can also bring single phase out of it if required, but the use case for this one is not that not in that way. I don't have an image of the 30 kilowatt, which is an all-in-one unit. So the battery and the control system is in one box, which makes it even more portable and more capable for the military to take it all over the world. This is an earlier iteration of that where we built it into a trailer. These are currently out in the field running tests in different places, and in advent of being able to bring the other unit that I just showed you online. The next version that we have something that's called a deployable microgrid. So what you're seeing here is an image of a full microgrid, battery, switchgear, and control system. Really what you do is you put yourself a pad or pylons, drop it in place, connect your DERs, your distributed energy resources, and then connect to your load, and off you go. You've got yourself a microgrid in a box, as it were. This is on a 20-foot ISO container. We also have one on a 30-foot, and there it is being built in the plant. This one here should be ready to go by January, end of January, and we'll start taking it to military bases with some of our partners to go and field test. One of the other unique parts of this is that those folks have asked us to hang electric vehicle chargers on the sides, and we said, yep, no problem, we can do that. So you're going to have a microgrid EV charging system. And here's the 30 kW or 30 ISO of that. Again, we can run up to 1.5 megawatt hours, which is quite a bit of capability. And now stationary, sorry to be going a little bit quick, but I don't want to take up too much time. This is what we call the standard setup, and you've got batteries in your control system that are on the same pad or near each other, and then you can see the solar field in the background providing capabilities for the customer there. And that installation is up north in Michigan at one of our military installations. And again, another picture of what we've got. This one here is actually installed in Hawaii. Matter of fact, I've got to make some adjustments to that one and make it grow. They would like to make it larger. So that's the good thing about these systems. They're designed to be daisy chained. So you can, it's kind of a Lego block. You don't have to build an entire microgrid at once. You can build it a little bit at a time. Okay, and again, this is a quick explanation of where we've got on our export opportunities. Currently, NATO, Israel, Southeast Asia military have been asking us a lot of questions, and we've had lots of quotes out there, likely to have something happen here next little bit. And then we also have a commercial, especially on the rural electrification and the off-grid and the mining territories. Again, the key component is that the customer is looking for us to make sure that they have power when they need it. And that's really what we specialize in having out in the field. Got a couple of case studies, but I'll leave those for later because I think it's probably just better to get into Q&A. And that right there finishes it off.
Well, Norm.
Great, Norm. Thanks so much. That's fascinating, and it's great to see the scope of what you're doing, what Cummins is doing, and it's just a good way to move us forward and sort of set the stage for a little further discussion. I'd like to open the floor to our audience, and we're going to start the discussion. Andrew has a question to begin, but we will feel free to put your question in the chat, and we can have our panelists address your questions from there. But we'll have Andrew start. We have a question for our panelists.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. And thank you again to Norm, Gary, Ben, and Devin for truly fascinating presentations. It updated all of us on what's going on in CleantechGreentech, so thank you. And Norm, that was a perfect segue because the first question gets into one of your last slides, which is for all the presenters, where are you seeing increasing export opportunities and or projects outside the United States? You mentioned Southeast Asia, I think. You mentioned Israel, NATO. But if we could, Norm, since you were the last speaker, if you'd go first, since you talked a little bit about that, but then go around and ask that of Gary, and then finally Devin. I think Devin also had a question.
Right. Great question on that one. We are seeing a lot of activity out of Australia, especially in the mining categories. They're very interested in having solutions there. Africa is very, very active, especially Nigeria, South Africa we've got several projects that we're working there. Let's see. There were a couple of other countries that Total has brought to us to the fray in oh gosh, I want to say not Thailand, Cambodia, and the Philippines. So those seem to be the most interesting areas from what I call mini grid perspective. The EV systems the EV system microgrids, we've got a lot of activity happening in Europe on those. And I think they're a little bit ahead of us in vehicle electrification in some respects, but mostly I think that reason for that is that Total, since they have gas stations throughout Europe, is trying to electrify their gas stations, and they're looking to us to provide solutions. But those are the places that we're seeing a lot of activity.
Gary, the same question to you.
Well, I think in our markets today, certainly we see China, Europe, and North America as leading regions where we're seeing activity. I think most people realize how quickly China moved in the BEV space, and so we feel like we're on the front end of potentially that wave on the fuel cell space. But those three regions are going to be driving, and then I think we'll have other regions that will be lagging over time. And so those are the areas of focus. I will state though,
Sorry, Gary.
Eric Hunt was a rider on the fuel cell train out in Europe, and he was very delighted. Tells a great story.
Thank you, Gary. Ben, the same question to you from the Battery Innovation Center. You mentioned that you're connected to 450 companies, not only that's globally. So same question to you.
Yeah, if you look at the impact areas, frankly, from an energy storage perspective, and advanced technology, as we look at batteries, I think a lot of people are may be aware in some cases, but may not be fully aware of the orders of magnitude. If you look, I mean, Asia today, specifically China, but other spots, within the existing Asian countries, is responsible for greater than over 95% of the deployment of energy storage today as we know it. If you look from everything from cell phones to cars, from electrification and advanced energy perspective, Europe, as Gary alluded to as well. So you got Asia and then Europe. Europe makes up a few more percentage points on top, and then frankly the U.S. and the balance of the world are the last, less than 2% from a deployment perspective. However, the U.S. is definitely an emerging market. As you look across, total technologies, we are starting to, work on taking the lead from a grid perspective. So relevant to what Norm and his team are working on. There's some key technologies that we need here in the U.S. So you're starting to see us really starting to lead on the grid side. And then as you look at, some of the more advanced products today, again, that's where the U.S. is taking that, taking the charge, pun entirely intended. But again, we have to look at the global stage, which is, energy and technology deployment is really a worldwide thing, and it's really based in a couple key areas. And the U.S. is one of the few, but not the leader yet. So.
Devin, thank you, Ben. Devin, the same question to you. And before we're about 6 minutes to 1, we may go over, if that's okay with the presenters, for a few minutes just to complete it. But I think this is really fascinating. And Devin, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard
from
to
the US and India.
It's hard to give a clear answer for all clean tech because obviously markets are different based on your product or service. I do think as we look at the world, we see a few factors that contribute to making, some markets more attractive than others. Obviously, for energy, things like projected electricity demand growth. India, according to the IEA, has the largest projected demand growth by 2030. The Indo-Pacific as a whole is a huge source of demand growth, as is Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. Low carbon policies, especially in Europe, are driving a lot of demand for a lot of the products that we've heard about today. Same thing with clean energy targets. There are also challenges that come with that, right? Europe has varying standards. In the Indo-Pacific region, there's a lot of competition from low-cost Chinese suppliers for U.S. companies. We see a lot of local content requirements as well that U.S. companies are trying to deal with. So those are, some of the ups and downs, I think, for clean tech exporters that we're watching here as we're looking at different markets.
Thank you.
Do we want to go into, let's go into the chat and be responsive to that, Andrew. What do you think? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Mark.
Okay, so let me read this in the chat. The first question: how are companies, panelists, partnering together to implement green? How is the United States facilitating, encouraging, and helping finance that? For instance, selling green tech batteries to solar production companies in order to apply the energy storage perspective. I open the floor to anybody who would like to comment.
I think on the Cummins side, certainly, there's partnerships happening with within industry and government on how the technologies certainly need to demonstrate themselves and certainly show value to that. And so I think that's a key from kind of that early on. How do we prove the hypothesis? And so you can't prove the hypothesis with pretty PowerPoints. We got to get product into customer hands. We got to get them using it. If they use it and they don't have a place to do anything with infrastructure, that's a problem. And so, all these different business models have to be developed. And so, these projects that allow the what I'd call like the supply chain as in proper to work together and prove these things out is just so huge. And it's going to end up driving in terms of how we'll be thinking about the long-term costs and benefits to this as well. Of course, again, Cummins' primary target right now is carbon neutrality. And so, those partnerships are key and huge, and we're going to need a lot more of it.
Norm, Ben?
I would, sorry if I can get my voice to work with me. Sorry, it's about cooked. Yeah, I would echo what Gary had mentioned. As we look, across the global stage, and those partnerships being very critical.
Norm?
Yeah, for us, it's crucial. I mean, being a small component, we have to have, we bring one component to the game. We have to have strong partnerships to be able to deliver those, especially if we're talking about outside of the boundaries of our country. One of the things that there was a quick question in there that I heard about financing. Exim Bank is really one of the places that helps dramatically, because it allows for U.S. companies to have an even footing. I'm going to leave it at that, because we know there's some trade challenges or some componentry challenges when you go up against certain other manufacturers from certain other places. So XM requires U.S. content, which helps us dramatically, especially with things like what we provide. So I want to give a shout out to that. And Eric's been very good about connecting us with the folks up there so that we could get engaged with partners and utilize those kind of funds.
Yeah, that's very important. And bringing that point to the fore, talking about partnership and the role of government, a question that Eric mentions in the chat is, are the growth markets of Europe, China, Asia, and the Americas linked to where governments are setting strict carbon neutral targets and offering R&D funds? So what's the role, gentlemen, of government in doing what Gary, Norm, and Ben and others have said about what's their role in some of this? Because some of these new technologies, there needs to be some money.
Yeah, that's, I was going to say, I'll jump in there at least on that one. Again, being on the front end of innovation, we get a chance to see what, a lot of countries are doing. Frankly, if you look at Asia, historically, what they're doing is, the government, is subsidizing. So they have been doing that historically, which is why you saw so much deployment of batteries in China. Frankly, as you look at other technologies, I came from the circuit board industry, even, back during that time when they were very much leading the market. They're very much in the subsidizing. So heavily subsidizing, in fact, almost to the point of view would say kind of government ownership of the technologies in order to push them forward. The advantage we have here in the U.S. is, frankly, there's been a broad deployment of dollars, and you're seeing, frankly, through every administration, be it red or blue, or in the middle, we've seen the administrations be willing to employ dollars to put forth in R&D, and we're seeing again, in this current administration, and even though in the current climate we're in, they have been making sure that they keep a keen eye on R&D and innovation as well, and they're focused on not only the IP, but also how do we make sure that we bring those products to market and make that a key technology driver. So it's without a doubt, you're seeing that R&D funds are coming about more and more. Frankly, I'll give credit to the automotive industry. Again, they seem to be the sexy headlines for everybody. So everybody's announcing that, all their stuff is going to be all electric by, pick a year. That at least causes people to pay attention to the industry, right, wrong, or indifferent. And whether it all comes to fruition, it is causing other sectors, as we see, and investors to open the pocketbooks, and agencies to open the pocketbooks for not only for automotive and what we'll say all motive, but they're also opening it for other sectors, recognizing what we're going to need for an infrastructure perspective.
Let me ask one thing before we close. I know we're tight on time, but I'd like to end as a group. What is the United States good at in this sector? I think that's pretty important for us to sort of close out our discussion. Where's our comparative and competitive advantages, the United States, and what technologies are we winning in, and what can we grow? I'd like to open the floor to that.
I'll quickly say IP and know-how.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got to echo that too. Some of our tech is just really light years ahead of other locations. It's just being able to compete apples to apples is a challenge outside of our borders, at least for us.
Gary?
I concur with both the previous points. I think the IP stuff is certainly a big darn deal. I think we got to continue to do work on the supply chain side to ensure that the U.S. is in a terrific position. Certainly, in some cases, we can very easily get ourselves into some squirrely things on the supply chain side, but I think that can improve over time, and I think the government can play a big role in that. And so that's my view, at least.
Okay. Well, we want to be respectful of everyone's time. It's just a few minutes after the hour. I want to give 10 more seconds if anybody has a burning question in the chat. I didn't see anything else in the chat. So, Andy, do you have any closing comments?
I think Mr. Ackerley had a question about, is there a company in Indiana that implements solar systems, develops solar systems? And Ben's nodding his head for a quick response there. And so,
yeah, in fact, that company, we do have a very large company that's deploying. At this point, has got, I believe, 75 megawatt of capability already out there, which is Indiana Solar. So if you go out and Google Indiana Solar, you can find some information about that company. Actually, Energy Systems Network has helped support them with. They're focused heavily on the commercial scale, and I would say on the small business scale, not as much on the consumer scale, but obviously has a direct impact to the end consumer.
Thank you, Ben. Anything else? Norm, anything else to add by the panel? I do want to say thank you again to the speakers. Thank you to Eric Hunt for working with Mark and myself to organize this event. It's a topic that we may visit in the future because it's so critical to our country, and it's going to be a growing space. We all spoke about a topic of conversation this today was Africa, and I do want to mention that we're going to be having a Doing Business in Africa event for a half day in person the beginning of May 2022. The District Export Council will have more information posted on that on our website. It'll be up at the Carmichael Hotel in Carmel. So we hope to have you participate in that. And our next event for the deck is for an export lunch and learn it's always the third Thursday of every other month. So it'll be January 20th, supply chain. Also another rather timely topic. Again, thank you very much, Mark. Over to you to close.
Okay. Well, we want to say thank you to our panelists. And if there are other questions, please feel free to either email me or the panelists, and we'll try to address questions left in the chat after time. But we hope you found this presentation at Export Lunch and Learn valuable, enjoyable, and informative. Thank you to our speakers, our panelists, and to you, our audience, for joining us today. Thanks, and until next time, we'll sign off. Thank you very much.